Hello and welcome to another Excel tips video. I am Sumit Bansal, and in today's video I'm going to show you a new Excel function called scan. Now scan is a lambda helper function, which means that you use it along with the lambda function, and it has a very specific use case. So while scan is a powerful function, I feel that it can be a little bit complicated for beginners to understand. So in this video, I will first show you an example, a very simple example of using the scan function and how it works. And then I will show you two use cases where you can use scan function to get things done faster. So let's get to it. So here I have this data set and I want to calculate the running total for all these months sales values. So to calculate running total, you actually do not even need to use a formula. It's very easy. You can just select this column, go to this quick analysis icon, click on it, then go to the totals option, and here you can click on running total for the column. And as soon as I click on it, it inserts the running total here, and it also gives me the formula. So you can see it gives me some formula where it has B2 is to B2, where the first reference is logged. So as it goes down, it is going to give me the running total. Now, if this is all that you want to do, then this is probably a better way to do it. Just use a simple sum function or just use the quick analysis icon that I showed you, and you're done. So you do not need to use the scan function in this simple case. But let me still use the scan function to explain the concept, and then I'm going to show you two examples where the scan function could actually be more useful. So let me delete this. And here I'm going to use the scan function. But before I do that, let me explain the syntax. So let me open the official documentation of scan. And Microsoft documentation of the scan function is not very helpful. It is a bit confusing, but let me still take the syntax from here. So what it does, it says a scan function takes three arguments. The first one is the initial value, and this in this case could be 0. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to start with 0, and then I'm going to add this sales value, and it gives me the result as the running total. Then when I go to the next cell, I'm going to add these two values. So my initial value should become from 0, it should convert to the sales value from the cell above. And this can be done using the scan function. So my initial value is the first argument. The second argument is the array, which is going to be these values that I want to add. And the third argument is the lambda, which is the function that is applied to these two values, the initial value and the array. Now, of course, I'm showing you the running total example, so it is going to be a simple sum function, but you can use any function in this case. You can create any lambda, and that is where scan becomes more powerful. So let me show you how this function works. So here I'm going to take the initial value, which is 0. My array is going to be this. And because I just want to sum these, you do not even need to create a lambda function. You can simply just use the sum function here. And when you do that, it knows that it needs to add two values, the initial value, which is 0, and the current value, which is B2. And now when I hit enter, it gives me the result. It gives me the running total. So this is very simple. Again, not as simple as just using the sum function, but this is how scan function works. But let me still go in a little more detail and explain what is happening. So here I've used the sum function, but if you have to create your own lambda, you can also do that. So let me show you how it works. So here, let me create that. Instead of sum, what I would do is I would create the lambda, which takes two arguments. Now, when you're working with scan function, your lambda needs to have two arguments. The first one is called an accumulator, and the second one is called the value. Now, you can name it anything you want. I'm putting it as ACC and VAL. You can give it any variable name you want. And the third argument is going to be the function that is going to use these. Now, this is not the same as these two values. The accumulator here is going to be the value that is going to give us the result of the lambda function, and the value is the actual value of the array, which is going to be the sales value. So here, if I use sum and I say ACC plus val, and now I hit enter, it gives me the result here, and you can see it gives me the same result. So what's happening in this case is, let me explain both of these here. So I have the accumulator value here. So in this lambda function, I have two arguments. The first one is the accumulator, the second one is the value, and then I'm using the result, the formula, sum formula. So what happens is my accumulator value is the initial value here, which is 0. So I start with 0. Then my value in the array is going to be this value here. So this part here becomes this value. And now my sum function, so let me center align this, just looks nicer when things are center aligned. And now let's call this the result. which is going to be simple this plus this. Now this happens because I've used the sum function within lambda. So my accumulator value within lambda is 0. My value is the current value of the cell, and this is my result. But the next time my accumulator value is now not 0. It is actually the result that I got in the previous cell. So it becomes this value here. So my accumulator is now this one. My current value is now this one. And now my result here is going to be the sum of these two values, which is 88497, which becomes this. Now when I go down again, my accumulator value now changes to this value. My actual value is this here, and my result becomes this. So you're getting a hang of how it's working. What is happening is in the lambda function, I specified the initial value, which is 0, which is this accumulator value here. Then I specified the array, which is going to be these sales values. So as it goes down, it picks up one value at a time. And then within the lambda function, I said the accumulator value, which keeps on changing, will start from 0, which is the initial value. And then this is also going to give me the result. So whatever result I get from the function will be stored in the accumulator value and would be returned as the result. So it gives me the sum result, but the next time it goes to the next cell, it is now not 0, it is now the sum of these two values. So this is how the scan function works. I know it is a little bit confusing, but when I show you the third example, it is going to become a lot more clear. So this is a simple example. As I said, you do not need to use the scan function here. You can simply use a sum function. So let me show you another example where using the scan function could be more useful. So here I have this date-wise data set where I have these products: printer, scanner, projector, their units sold, their price, and their total sales. And what I want to do is I want to extract this data based on the selection in this dropdown. So if I choose scanner, I want all the data for scanner, and then I want to calculate the running total. So I can do this by using a simple filter function where this is my array, and I want to include anything that is equal to scanner. So I would select this column here, and I would say if this is equal to the selection from the drop down, then just give me the result. And it gives me the result for all scanners. If I change this to printer, it gives me the result for all the printers. And here I can use the running total. So I can come here and I can first, I would have to extract the value that I want to add, which is total sales here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say scan, and within scan, my initial value is going to be 0. My array is going to be this column here. So I can just use choose calls in here. So I would just put G4 hash, because then it is going to give me the entire result of this dynamic array. And the column I want to get it from here is the fifth column, which is total sales. And now my function here could be just the sum function. Now when I hit enter, it gives me the running total for all these values. And if you come here and you change this, then you can see the running total automatically update. So scan function here makes a little more sense, because if you're using the sum function here, you do not know how the array is expanding or contracting. So if you use the scan function, which is dependent on this value here, then it makes a little more sense. But let me show you a third example where you would actually see the power of this scan function, which is not a running total example. So here I have this data where I have these names and I have these week status where for every week, the person is either absent or present. And I want to know if there is any person who's absent for 3 consecutive weeks. So I do not want anyone who's absent for 3 weeks, but 3 consecutive weeks. For example, John in this case is absent for 3 consecutive weeks. Mike in this case is absent for 3 consecutive weeks. But if there is someone who's absent, for example, Tim, he's been absent for 3 weeks, but these are not consecutive. So I don't want to know this. I want to just highlight those names that have been absent for 3 consecutive weeks. Now, in this case, what I need to do is somehow keep a track of the previous cell as well. So for example, when I'm counting, I just don't need to count the number of absents, but I also need to count whether the absent in the next cell is in that scenario where the previous cell was also absent. So in this case, I need to also keep a track of all these cells. Now, this is where scan function really shines. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to use the scan function. My initial value is going to be 0, and my array here is going to be these cells, the cells that have present and absent. And then I'm going to use a function. Now in this case, I'm going to create a lambda function because the logic is a little more complex than just using 2 arguments. So I cannot just use sum or if or anything. I would have to use a lambda function. Now in this case, in this lambda function, let's call the first argument counter, and let's call the second argument current, so current value. And now I'm going to use the function where I would say if the current value is equal to absent Then I want the counter, the value should be counter plus 1. Now here I have said my initial value is 0, which means my counter value here is 0. So if the current value is absent, so as it's going through these cells, if the current value is absent, the counter value becomes 1. If it's absent again, counter value becomes 2. If it's absent 3 times in a row, the counter value is going to become 3. And if it is not absent, if it is present, the counter value resets to 0. So this is a simple if function I'm using here. And now let's see what I get when I hit enter. So here I get an array of these numbers, and what happens is if it gets absent once, it shows me 1 here, but if it gets present, it shows me 0 here. But as it goes in the row, the number of times it encounters absent consecutively, it is going to just keep on increasing that counter value. So you can see the counter value here goes up to 3, but then as soon as it encounters a present value, it brings it down to 0. And I can drag it for all these cells, and you can see I have these values. Now I do not want this array. I just want to know whether there is anyone who has been absent for 3 consecutive weeks, 3 or more. So I can get that now easily by using a simple function. So let me copy this entire scan function. I'm going to put it here. And now in this case, I would just use the max function. And the max function gives me the value here. So I can drag this down, and you can see it gives me 3 here, it gives me 3. So this is what I wanted. I wanted to highlight those names where they have been absent for more than 2 consecutive weeks. So 3 or more. So I can just come here and I can now use an if function here. And I can say if this way, let me actually do this in the formula bar. It's easier. So if this function is greater than 2, then give me something like investigate. And if it is not, then just give me all good. Or maybe you can leave it blank. And now it gives me investigate here. I can drag this down and it gives me all good, but investigate in these 2 cases where 3 cells consecutively had the value absent. So this is quite useful because now it allows you to keep track of the previous value as well. So you can have a counter within the formula. Now this is something I do not think you can do with any other Excel function. So this is very useful. If you extend the same logic, think of using scan function where you're doing inventory management and you want to know when the inventory goes below a certain level or below a certain threshold. So you can instantly highlight it. This can be done with this function because you can keep track of the previous cell. So scan function can be extremely powerful, and know that this probably is the only function in Excel that can keep track of the previous cell, and you can have a counter right within the function. That's it in this video. I hope you found this useful. Also, if you're liking these videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you never miss out on any new Excel tips video I come up with. Thank you and have a nice day.